Alright, hello everyone and welcome to another video for the Progressive Kids online classes for the Raspberry Pi course. Now, in this video, I'm going to be going over what you need to do to get up and running with your Raspberry Pi on your Windows 10 computer. Alright, so this video is going to be in three major parts. The first part is going to be installing all of the necessary software you need to get on your Windows computer. The second part is going to be hooking up your Raspberry Pi to your computer. And the third part is going to be actually connecting to your Raspberry Pi. Alright, so to get started with part 1, installing all the software, I'm going to begin with opening up Google Chrome. Now the very first program that we want to install is a piece of software called PuTTY. So I'm just going to search up PuTTY download. And you can see Google has this nice go to download link for us right here. It'll bring us to this website, and I'm going to go click on 64-bit installer. If the 64-bit installer doesn't work for you, just go ahead and try the 32-bit installer. Okay, now that it's finished downloading, I'm going to go ahead and show in folder. And I'm going to open up the installer. I'll click on next, next, install. You should see an admin window pop up. Just click on yes. And then it should only take a few seconds to install. I'll click on finish. It opens up this document for us. If you want to read it, you can, but I'm just going to go ahead and close it. Alright, the next thing you want to install is a program called VNC Viewer. So I just searched up VNC Viewer download, and I'm going to click on the very first link. Alright, you can see it automatically brings us to the Windows tab. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and then click on Download VNC Viewer. It's also going to take a few seconds to download, and once it's done, I'm going to show in Finder and open it up. And then I'll just click through the installer, click on OK, and then next, agree to the terms, next, next again, and install. Another admin window should pop up. Just click on yes, and then click on finish. Alright, so that was all for part 1, installing software for connecting to the Raspberry Pi. In the next part, I'm going to show you how to connect up your Raspberry Pi to your computer. Alright, so here we are on step 2, which is actually physically connecting up the Raspberry Pi. So you can see right here I have 3 different items. I have my USB-C cable, which is to supply power to the Raspberry Pi. And then I have this Ethernet jack over here. You really do need to have an Ethernet port on the laptop or Windows 10 device that you're using in order to be able to connect up to your Raspberry Pi. So make sure you have a computer that has an Ethernet port on it. And then you can see I finally also have my Raspberry Pi. And again, make sure you have your micro SD card plugged into your Raspberry Pi before you start this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my power cable and plug that into the USB-C port on my Raspberry Pi. I'm going to take the other end and plug it into the wall. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is take my Ethernet jack and plug it into the Ethernet port on my Raspberry Pi, and then plug the other end into the computer I'm using. Okay, now my power cord actually has a switch on it to allow me to turn the power on and off, so I'm going to switch it on right now. Okay, and now that the Pi is on, I'm going to switch over back to my computer and do some final setup with the applications that we've just installed. Okay, now that we've been able to hook up our Raspberry Pi to some power and to our computer, the next thing we're going to do is use the programs that we've just installed to be able to get an actual connection going on between our computer and the Raspberry Pi. Alright, so I'm going to start off by going to the search bar and looking up PuTTY, which if you remember is one of the applications that we've installed. You should see this window pop up. And under hostname, what I'm going to type in is the name of the Raspberry Pi board. The default name of every Raspberry Pi is just Raspberry Pi. And then afterwards, I'm going to type in .local. That's just to specify that I'm connecting to a device that's on my local network. Okay, next thing, I'm going to make sure the port that we're connecting to is port 22. And then the connection type, I'm going to make sure it's SSH. Okay, once you check those three things, just go ahead and click on Open. And what it's going to open up for you is a terminal window. If you see this window open up, that means you've successfully been able to connect to the Raspberry Pi. Alright, before we move on, we need to go ahead and log in to a Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to use the default login credentials, which is username Pi, P-I, all lowercase. And then it's going to ask for a password. I'm going to type in Raspberry, that's the default password, which is RASPBERRY. Notice how I typed all that in, but you didn't see the cursor move. That's completely normal. Know that the text that you just typed in was properly inputted. So once you type in Raspberry, just go ahead and press enter. And now you should see this text pop up, and you should see this colorful command line come up as well. You can think of the Raspberry Pi command line as being similar to your regular old desktop interface that you use in Windows or whatever. Just instead of pointing and clicking on applications to run things, all you would do is just type in various commands and run them like that. So to get a desktop interface going with our Raspberry Pi, we're actually going to want to do a little bit of setup with running some commands on the command line interface. So I'm going to start off by typing in sudo raspi-config. Sudo just means to run as an administrator, and then raspi-config is just the default Raspberry Pi configurator that's built into the command line. So I'm going to press enter, and you should see this pop up over here. We can navigate around by using the up and down arrow keys. I'm going to go under interfacing options and then press enter. And then I'm going to scroll down onto VNC and then press enter. And then I'm going to use the left and right arrow keys to hover over yes. And then I'm going to press enter. And then that's going to enable our VNC server. Now I'm going to press the left and right arrow keys to go under finish and press enter. And now we're outside of raspi-config. And we've hopefully been able to enable our VNC server. So we've SSH'd onto our Raspberry Pi just now, which gives us a terminal interface, and we can now try and VNC, which will allow us to get a more familiar desktop interface with our Raspberry Pi. Alright, so that's where the other application we installed comes into play. So I'm going to search up VNC Viewer. Now the next thing we're going to do is under this address bar over here, type in raspberrypi.local, just like we did when we were establishing an SSH connection. Alright, you should see this pop up, and under username, we'll do the same thing, type in pi, and password, type in raspberry, all lowercase, and if you want, click on remember password so you don't have to type all this on again. And I'm going to press OK. Now, usually you should be able to reach the Raspberry Pi desktop by doing this, but sometimes you'll run into this issue where it says currently cannot show the desktop. This is usually because there's no display actually connected up to the Raspberry Pi. Since we're not going to be wanting to connect a physical display to our Raspberry Pi for this course, what we can do instead is just open up our SSH terminal window again, and then I'm going to type in VNC server. What that's going to do is it's effectively going to create a virtual display for us on the Raspberry Pi. So we had this actual display which wasn't working because we don't have anything plugged into the Pi. But if we type in raspberrypi.local, and you can see right here the new desktop is on Raspberry Pi :1. It should be :1 for you as well. If not, just type in whatever the command line says. But I'm going to type in raspberrypi.local :1. Now it's going to ask me for the credentials again. I'm going to type in Pi Raspberry, remember password, and then OK. And you can see finally we're on the Raspberry Pi OS desktop. Alright, you can see it gives us this warning, tells us to change the default password, but no one else is going to connect to your Raspberry Pi, so no need to worry about that. So this video was getting set up with the Raspberry Pi for the Progressive Kids Raspberry Pi course. If you have any questions or ran into any issues, please feel free to let us know. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and see you until next time. Bye. Oh yeah, one more thing before we close off the video. I'm going to quickly show you how to properly turn off your Raspberry Pi. Of course, you could just yank the power cord, but that's pretty similar to just yanking the power off of a desktop PC. And as you probably know, that's not necessarily the safest thing to be doing every single time. So I'm going to quickly go over how you can properly turn off the Raspberry Pi. If you have your VNC window still open, you can go under the menu bar, and then go under Shutdown, and then click on Shutdown. Otherwise, if you want to do it through the command line, you can, let me open up the terminal, and then it's a bit messy, so I'll type in clear, and then what you can do is you can first type in VNC server -kill space colon and then the port that your VNC server is running on. If you remember, mine was 1, so I just typed in 1 and then enter. So you can see that closed the other window right there because I was able to end the VNC session. And then I'm going to just type in sudo power off, and you can see the network connection was unexpectedly closed. And if you wait about 30 seconds, the Raspberry Pi is gonna turn itself off. Once you see the green light on the Raspberry Pi stop flashing, you can go ahead and fully turn off power to the Raspberry Pi.